Have you ever stood at the edge of a dream, whether it's launching a new project, stepping into a meaningful relationship, or embracing a bold vision for your life, only to feel an invisible force pulling you back? How often have you labeled yourself a failure, convinced that your repeated missteps are proof of some inherent flaw? The weight of these moments can be crushing. The quiet shame of missed opportunities, the nagging belief that you're simply not good enough, and the relentless cycle of trying, stumbling, and retreating into self-doubt. We look at our actions through a lens of judgment, as if we're perpetually tripping over our own feet, no matter how desperately we strive to move forward. The most insidious part is not the setbacks themselves, but the conviction we carry that we are broken, defective, or doomed to repeat the same mistakes endlessly. But what if this narrative is a lie? What if what we call failure is not a reflection of our inadequacy, but a carefully orchestrated act of self-sabotage, directed by unseen parts of our psyche? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist whose groundbreaking work illuminated the hidden corners of the human mind, offered a radical perspective on this phenomenon. He suggested that our so-called failures are not accidents, but the result of an unconscious theater, a silent drama where parts of ourselves operating in the shadows undermine our conscious aspiration. These parts are not malevolent forces seeking our downfall. On the contrary, they believe they are protecting us, shielding us from dangers we may not even perceive. Yet, this protection comes at a cost, keeping us small, safe, and confined to a life far smaller than our potential. Jung's insight is both unsettling and liberating. The obstacles holding us back are not external enemies like unsupportive peers, demanding circumstances, or a cruel world. They are internal, woven into the fabric of our psyche. These are the voices of fear, doubt, and shame, shaped by experiences we may no longer consciously recall, moments of rejection, criticism, or unmet expectations that have left lasting imprints. These voices form a hidden committee within us, whispering commands that dictate our actions: delay that project, avoid that risk, retreat from that opportunity. Without realizing it, we obey, sabotaging ourselves just when success seems within reach. Why do we do this? Why do we betray our own aspiration at the most pivotal moments? Jung's answer lies in the concept of the shadow, a powerful, often misunderstood force within us and the unconscious mechanisms it employs to maintain the status quo. The shadow, the hidden architect of self-sabotage, at the core of Jung's psychology is the concept of the shadow, a term that encapsulates the disowned, repressed, or hidden aspects of our personality. The shadow is not a mere metaphor, but a living, autonomous system within the psyche that holds everything we've been taught to reject: our fears, insecurities, traumas, forbidden desires, and feelings of inadequacy. From a young age, we learn to navigate a world that demands conformity. Society, family, and culture impose rules about what is acceptable and what must be hidden. Don't cry, it shows weakness, we're told. Don't boast, it's arrogance. Be grateful, not resentful. To survive, we craft a persona, socially acceptable mask that presents a polished version of ourselves to the world. In doing so, we banish entire parts of our being to the unconscious, locking them away in the basement of our psyche. But what is repressed does not disappear. Like seeds buried in fertile soil, these rejected aspects take root and grow. Gaining strength and autonomy in the darkness, the shadow becomes a covert operator, a master manipulator that influences our decisions without our awareness. It learns the language of our fears and uses it to steer our lives, often in ways we barely notice. When we stand on the precipice of change, whether it's pursuing a new career, expressing our authentic self, or taking a bold risk, the shadow whispers, "This isn't for you. You'll fail. You don't deserve it." Its voice is so seamlessly woven into our inner dialogue that we mistake it for truth, accepting its warnings as our own thoughts. Jung emphasized that the shadow is not inherently malevolent. It is primitive, driven by a single, overriding instinct: survival. To the shadow, growth is a threat. Change means stepping into the unknown, exposing ourselves to judgment, or risking rejection. Success, in the shadow's logic, could lead to isolation, envy, or failure to meet others' expectations. To protect us from these perceived dangers, The shadow activates a repertoire of sabotaging behaviors. It might paralyze us with anxiety before a crucial presentation, tempt us to procrastinate on a deadline, or provoke a conflict that derails a promising relationship. These actions are not random. They follow a pattern, triggered whenever we approach the boundary between our comfort zone and the uncharted territory of growth. Imagine the shadow as an overprotective guardian, standing at the gate of your potential. It's not trying to harm you, it's trying to keep you safe, but its methods are outdated, rooted in emotional wounds from the past. Perhaps it learned long ago that standing out led to criticism, that vulnerability invited rejection, or that ambition brought shame. These lessons, often formed in childhood or adolescence, create unconscious codes that govern our behavior, even when the original context no longer applies. The shadow doesn't operate on rational logic, it operates on emotional associations, reacting to present opportunities as if they carry the same risks as past pains. The origins of the saboteur, emotional imprints, and unconscious codesto. Understand why we sabotage ourselves. We must explore the origins of the shadow's power. Jung believed that the shadow is shaped by emotional imprints, moments of pain, rejection, or trauma that leave lasting marks on the psyche. These imprints often form in childhood, when we are most vulnerable to the judgments of others. Picture a child who is scolded for sharing their ideas, mocked for their enthusiasm, or punished for expressing their authentic self. These experiences teach the child that certain behaviors or emotions are dangerous, creating unconscious associations. Standing out invites criticism, vulnerability leads to rejection, and confidence attracts shame. These associations become psychic codes, deeply ingrained beliefs that operate below the level of conscious awareness. For example, a child who learns that speaking up leads to ridicule may grow into an adult who hesitates to share their opinions, even in supportive environments. A teenager who is shamed for their ambition may become an adult who instinctively pulls back from opportunities for success. These codes are not rational, they are emotional, rooted in the raw pain of past experiences. The unconscious doesn't distinguish between the past and the present, so it continues to protect us from dangers that may no longer exist. Consider the story of Emma, a talented graphic designer who dreams of starting her own studio. Every time she begins to take steps toward her goal, researching business plans, reaching out to potential clients, she finds herself distracted by trivial tasks, missing deadlines, or doubting her abilities. On the surface, Emma calls herself lazy or disorganized, but the truth is deeper. As a child, Emma was criticized by a teacher for her creative work, told it was too flashy and impractical. That moment planted a seed in her unconscious. Creativity is risky, and standing out invites judgment. Now, whenever she approaches her dream, her shadow activates, whispering that it's safer to stay small and avoid the spotlight. Emma's story is not unique. We all carry similar imprints, moments when we learned that certain aspects of ourselves were unacceptable. These imprints shape the shadow's behavior, prompting it to sabotage us whenever we approach a moment of transformation. The shadow's favorite tools are subtle but effective: procrastination disguised as busyness, perfectionism that halts progress, indecision that avoids risk, or self-inflicted chaos that disrupts stability. These behaviors are not signs of weakness. They are symptoms of an unconscious system working tirelessly to protect us from perceived threats. The silent war within, the battle between aspiration and fear. Jung described the psyche as a complex assembly of parts, some conscious and others unconscious, each with its own desires and agendas. This internal committee is rarely in agreement. One part of us longs to grow, to create, to shine. Another part clings to safety, familiarity, and the status quo. This creates a silent war within, a battle between our conscious aspiration and the unconscious fears embedded in the shadow. When we set out to achieve a goal, the shadow perceives it as a threat to our survival, activating defenses that pull us back from the edge of change. This war manifests in countless ways. It's the sudden urge to scroll through social media instead of working on a project. It's the inexplicable fatigue that hits just before a big opportunity. It's the argument we pick with a loved one right when we need their support most. It's the voice that says, "You're not ready, you're not good enough, or this will end in disaster." These are not random occurrences. They are the shadow's attempts to keep us within the boundaries of what it considers safe. For the tragedy is that we often misinterpret these behaviors as character flaws. We label ourselves lazy, undisciplined, or incapable, reinforcing the shadow's power. Jung urged us to see these actions not as failures, but as messages, signals from the unconscious that something deeper is at play. The shadow is not our enemy. It is a wounded guardian, acting on outdated instructions. Its goal is not to destroy us, but to protect us from the pain it associates with growth, exposure, or change. Dialoguing with the shadow, the path to integration. The key to overcoming self-sabotage, Jung argued, is not to fight the shadow, but to integrate it. Fighting the shadow through willpower, self-criticism, or denial only strengthens its resolve. When we try to suppress our fears or silence our doubts, we reinforce the internal conflict, giving the shadow more power to sabotage us. The true path to liberation lies in dialogue, a courageous, compassionate conversation with the parts of ourselves we've long ignored. Jung's technique of active imagination offers a powerful method for this dialogue. Unlike traditional meditation, which seeks to quiet the mind, active imagination invites us to engage with the unconscious. In this practice, we enter a relaxed, receptive state and allow images, symbols, or characters to emerge from the depths of our psyche, much like in a dream. We then interact with these figures, not as passive observers, but as active participants, asking questions and listening to their responses. Imagine sitting across from the part of you that procrastinates, criticizes, or holds you back. What does it look like? Is it a stern figure, a frightened child, or a shadowy presence? What does it say? What does it fear? The symbolic conversation allows us to give form to the formless, to bring the shadow into the light of awareness. For example, you might visualize your procrastinating self as a timid child, clutching a tattered blanket, afraid of being judged. By asking, "What are you protecting me from?" you might discover that this child fears failure or rejection, rooted in a long-forgotten moment of criticism. By listening without judgment, you create a space for the shadow to reveal its motives, transforming it from a chaotic force into a collaborator. Integration doesn't mean erasing the shadow. It means recognizing its legitimacy and redirecting its energy. The shadow is not a demon to be exorcised, but a part of our humanity that has been exiled for too long. By acknowledging its fears, we begin to dismantle the unconscious codes that drive our sabotage. We start to see that the shadow's actions, though misguided, stem from a desire to keep us safe. This realization shifts our relationship with the shadow, turning it from an adversary into an ally, transforming the energy of the shadow from destruction to creation. The integration of the shadow is not just about understanding, it's about transformation. Within every sabotaging impulse lies a reservoir of raw, unrefined energy, anger, fear, shame, insecurity that, when redirected, can become a source of immense power. Jung believed that these emotions are not negative, they are primal forces, waiting to be channeled constructively. The anger that sparks conflicts can become assertiveness. The fear that fuels procrastination can evolve into cautious preparation. The shame that holds us back can transform into empathy and sensitivity. Consider the story of James, a writer who repeatedly abandoned his manuscripts just before completion. Each time he neared the end of a project, he would find himself distracted by new ideas, overwhelmed by self-doubt, or caught in a cycle of perfectionism. Through therapy, James explored his shadow and discovered that his fear of finishing stemmed from a childhood experience where his creative efforts were dismissed by a critical parent. By dialoguing with this fear, James began to see it not as a flaw but as a protective mechanism. He learned to reframe his perfectionism as a desire for excellence and his fear of criticism as a call to share his work authentically. Over time, he completed his first novel, channeling the energy of his shadow into a creative triumph. This transformation requires us to rewrite the psychic scripts that govern our behavior. Instead of viewing procrastination as laziness, we can See it as a signal to address underlying fears, instead of dismissing self-doubt as weakness. We can explore its roots and reframe it as a call for self-compassion. By bringing these unconscious patterns into awareness, we reclaim the energy they've held captive and redirect it toward our goals. This is the essence of Jung's individuation process, the journey toward becoming a whole, integrated self, where all parts light and shadow work in harmony. Practical steps to overcome self-sabotage. Breaking the cycle of self-sabotage requires ongoing awareness and intentional practice. Here are detailed, actionable steps to recognize and integrate the shadow in your daily life. 1. Identify patterns of sabotage. Pay close attention to moments when you procrastinate, avoid opportunities, or create unnecessary conflict. Keep a journal to track these behaviors, noting the circumstances, emotions, and thoughts that accompany them. Ask, what am I avoiding? What fear or belief is driving this behavior? 2. Explore emotional imprints. Reflect on past experiences that may have shaped your shadow. Were there moments in childhood or adolescence when you felt rejected, criticized, or shamed? Write about these memories, focusing on the emotions they evoke. How might these experiences influence your behavior today? 3. Practice active imagination. Set aside quiet time to engage with your unconscious. Find a comfortable space, close your eyes, and allow an image or figure to emerge that represents your sabotaging self. Engage in a dialogue. Why do you stop me? What are you protecting me from? What do you need to feel safe? Write down the insights that arise. 4. Reframe setbacks as messages. Instead of labeling setbacks as failures, view them as signals from your psyche. When you notice yourself procrastinating or retreating, pause and ask, what is my shadow trying to protect me from? How can I address this fear constructively? 5. Cultivate self-compassion. Treat your shadow with kindness as you would a frightened child. Recognize that its actions, though limiting, stem from a desire to keep you safe. Practice affirmations like, I am safe to grow, or my fears are valid, but they don't define my potential. 6. Seek professional guidance. Working with a therapist or counselor trained in Jungian psychology can provide valuable support in exploring the shadow. They can guide you through active imagination, dream analysis, or other techniques to deepen your understanding and integration process. 7. Channel energy creatively. Once you've identified the shadow's fears, find ways to redirect its energy. For example, if fear of failure drives procrastination, set small, achievable goals to build confidence. If anger fuels conflict, channel it into assertive communication or creative expression. 8. Build a support system. Surround yourself with people who encourage your growth and challenge your limiting beliefs. Share your journey with trusted friends or mentors who can offer perspective and accountability. The path to wholeness, embracing the shadow as a guideth journey of integrating the shadow, is not a quick fix. It's a lifelong odyssey of self-discovery, courage, and transformation. It demands that we confront the parts of ourselves we've long ignored, accept our imperfections with humility, and take responsibility for our growth. Yet, the rewards are profound. By listening to the shadow, we reclaim our vitality, creativity, and authenticity. The energy once used to sabotage us becomes a force for creation, resilience, and purpose. Jung's wisdom reminds us that true strength lies not in denying our darkness, but in embracing it as an essential part of our humanity. The shadow is not an enemy to be defeated, but a wounded ally seeking integration. When we stop fighting ourselves and start listening, we move closer to wholeness, a state where our conscious aspiration and unconscious fears align, allowing us to live fully, authentically, and without the invisible anchors of self-sabotage. Imagine a life where the internal war is replaced by collaboration, where the voices that once held you back become guides pointing you toward your potential. Picture the energy of fear transformed into courage, shame into empathy, and doubt into wisdom. This is the promise of shadow work, not perfection, but integration, not invincibility, but wholeness. By embracing the shadow, we step out of the cycle of self-sabotage and into a new way of being, one where every part of us, light and dark, walks together toward a fuller, richer life. As you reflect on this, Consider the moments when you felt stuck, defeated, or held back. What if those moments were not failures, but invitations to explore your inner world? What if the saboteur within you is not an obstacle but a guide, pointing toward the parts of yourself that need healing? By accepting this invitation, you embark on a journey not just to overcome self-sabotage, but to discover the profound beauty of your own complexity. The shadow, once feared, becomes a teacher, guiding you toward a life of authenticity, purpose, and unshakable inner freedom.